All right, let's get started. My name is Kaya Heisey. I am from Mackin Educational Resources. We are the sponsor of Storyteller Spotlight. We are so excited today to have George Takei on the program with us. He is going to read aloud from his book and do a Q&A with the students. Our very special thanks to Penguin Random House for helping us get this event organized. When we transfer to the Q&A portion, so after George reads, when we transfer to the Q&A, we're going to use the Q&A button. So make sure to go down to the bottom of your screen and find the Q&A button. And then you might have to hit more to find it. And then you can put in your questions for George there. You can tell us who asked the question or what classroom you're in. So put your questions in the Q&A. You can also use the chat to say anything you want to George, and I will share that chat with him after the program. If you're watching with kids and you want to post a picture of them watching on social media, make sure to tag Mackin in it. We'd love to see the young people enjoying the event. And really quickly, next month, just want to plug that we have Christina Soontornvat, who will be doing a read aloud and Q&A on December 4th. All right, and here we go. I'm very pleased to introduce George Takei. George Takei is best known for his portrayal of Mr. Sulu in the acclaimed television and film series Star Trek. He's an actor, social justice activist, social media superstar, and New York Times bestselling author. In his new book, My Lost Freedom, George looks back at his own memories to help children today understand what it feels like to be treated as an enemy by your own country. Featuring powerful, meticulously researched watercolor paintings, this is a story of a family's courage, a young boy's resilience, and the importance of staying true to yourself in the face of injustice. George and his husband, Brad, live in Los Angeles, California. Welcome, George. I'm going to hand it over to George to read from his new book.
This is the cover of my book that I'm going to be reading from, My Lost Freedom. Hi, I'm George Takei, an 87-year-old actor. I have lived long and prospered, as we said on the sci-fi television series Star Trek, in which I played Hikaru Sulu. From my many years of living and acting, I have countless fond memories, some fantastical, some scary, and some amazing. I have memories of soaring through the galaxy, driving a starship with a crack team of mates from a small blue planet called Earth. We were all different. We had different skin color, different backgrounds, and different faiths, yet all worked together as a team, all contributing our own unique talent, knowledge, and ideas. We found our strength in our differences, ones that made our lives more interesting, more engaging, and more vibrant. As we said on Star Trek, infinite diversity in infinite combinations. But I also have memories of when our differences became our devastation. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, my world turned horribly upside down. I'm a Japanese American. My grandparents and my father came to America from Japan. My father spoke both English and Japanese fluently. He was American in every way except for his birthplace. However, our two countries, the United States and Japan, were now at war with each other. America saw us as the enemy simply because we looked like the people who did the bombing. We were seen as different from other Americans. This was unfair. We were Americans who had nothing to do with Pearl Harbor, yet we were imprisoned behind barbed wire fences. I have happier memories of the time before soldiers took us away to prison camps. My friend Donald had a giggly laugh and soft, curly blonde hair. Mine was black and shinier. We were different, but we had fun playing together. After the soldiers came, I never saw Donald again. I write this book on the wish that my childish friendship with Donald could have grown up to have that same kind of bond I enjoyed in the future world of Star Trek. I'm a grandson and son of immigrants. My father was brought to San Francisco when he was a boy by his father, a widower. My mother was born in Sacramento, California, to parents who had immigrated like all immigrants to America. My father and my grandparents came to this country boldly seeking a new life and opportunities. I was just 4 years old when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor on the island of Hawaii on December 7th, 1941, and the lives of all Japanese Americans were suddenly and drastically changed. The next day, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt declared war on Japan. February 19th, 1942, now commemorated as Day of Remembrance, was a day that we Japanese Americans will never forget, when the president ordered all Japanese Americans on the West Coast to be rounded up and jailed in prison camps. It was all very scary and confusing.
Thank you, George. All right, everyone, let's move to the Q&A portion. So go over to the Q&A section and put in your questions, or have your teacher put in your questions that you want to ask to George. All right, so I'm going to go away, but you'll hear my voice. The first question we got was, can you tell us about why you wanted to make this book?
Well, this is a part of American history, and I'm still surprised to this day when I meet people and I tell them about my childhood imprisonment, and they are shocked that such a thing happened. So I wrote this book so that people, my fellow Americans, know about what happened to Japanese Americans, even a child like me or my parents. All Japanese Americans on the West Coast were rounded up by armed soldiers and put into barbed wire prison camp. And so that's the reason why I wrote this book, My Lost Freedom.
A student is wondering about the dog on the cover. Who's that?
Well, that's we called him Blackie. We were sent to two different internment camps. The second one was on the high plains of Northern California, right by the Oregon border, a camp called Tule Lake. It was really a camp bristly with military armament. They had 3 layers of barbed wire fences. sentry towers with machine guns pointed at us, innocent people who had nothing to do with Pearl Harbor, and yet they had machine guns pointed at us 24 hours from the guard towers, and it was a very scary place. And they even had tanks rolling around on the outer perimeter. Uh, but we my brother and I was by that time 5 years old. My brother Henry was four, and we found a scraggly stray dog, black shaggy fur, sniffing around on the backside of the mess hall where we all had to take our meals together. And he looked very hungry, but he was very friendly. He wagged his tail and he came up to us. And so uh, Henry and I decided we're going to see if one of our friends who was a cook in the mess hall could provide a little something, a little tidbit that we could share with this dog. And he was preparing Wiener's teriyaki for dinner that night, uh, weenies that were sliced up. And so they were tiny bits of weenies, but very tasty. And gave us a piece of that uncooked, and we fed it to this black shaggy dog, and he just threw it into his mouth and gulped it down. He looked hungry still, and so I needed to get some more. But Mr. Kikutani, that was the man who we knew who was the cook, told us, I've got to feed all these people here in our block. I can't keep letting you feed their dinner to the dog. So we went to our mother to ask if she could provide us with cookie that she kept in the little tin for us. And so she got us a cookie in. We broke it up into small pieces, and my mother gave the dog one piece. I gave the other piece to him, and Henry gave his piece to the dog. And he became very friendly, and he stuck with us. So we found a name for him because he was all black, except for two peanut butter eyebrows on him. We called him Blackie, and he answered to Blackie, and he became our constant companion who stayed with us as we walked to school in another black barrack. And he patiently waited until school was over, and he walked back with us. Blackie was a member of our family.
Leah from second grade asked, what did you play while you were in the camps?
Well, we were little kids, so we had ways of finding our own fun. In the first camp we were in, it was in the swamps of Arkansas. This camp was the farthest east of all. There were 10 camps altogether, and around our block was a kind of a culvert. We called it a ditch, and we looked into that culvert, uh, kind of brownish yellowish water, but we saw little black fishies, wiggly fishies, swimming in that water, and they moved very slowly, so I could stick my hand in very quickly and scoop it up like this. And we found a empty pickle jar and put it in the jar with the water, and we watched it grow every morning. But then magical things happened to little black fishies in Arkansas. One morning, saw that the fish had grown two big bumps on each side of its body. And the next morning, we looked, the bump was even larger. And then by the third day, we saw that legs had popped out of the bumps, And then they turned into frogs, fish that turned into frogs and crawled up the side of our jar and escaped. We thought it was magic. Arkansas, the swamps of Arkansas, was a magical place full of wonderful, bizarre magic happening all the time.
Evelyn in fourth grade asked, "What made you want to be an actor?"
You know, uh, actors aren't made to want to be. We're born with that urge, that desire, that need to be an actor. And I was, when I first learned Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Stars, my parents were having visitors. This was before we were put into the camps. Uh, but when I saw that there was an audience in the living room, I went bouncing out and said, I learned Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Stars. I'll show you how I do it and perform for them. And in camp, after dinner, almost every other month, they showed movies, and uh, we saw uh, cowboy movies, gangster movies, and old Japanese samurai movies. And so we started playing Let's Pretend. And so we're born with that urge, that desire to act in front of other people and impress them with how magically we can be somebody else, a cowboy, a samurai, or a gangster.
Many students have asked, but specifically Breely in fifth grade asked, "How long in total were you in the concentration camps?"
We were incarcerated for the duration of World War II, which lasted 4.5 years, and then we were released. But the government had taken everything from our family. Uh, when before we went, my father had a business going on Wilshire Boulevard, and we lived right near there. We had a bank account. The government took over our bank account, our money. They took everything, and so that ruined my father's business. We had a home, two-bedroom house on Garnet Street, and we made regular monthly mortgage payments, just like you and your parents do. And but since the government took our money, we couldn't make those payments, so we didn't make it. And uh, it, it didn't matter to the bank because they knew we were going to be taken away. And of course, the soldiers came and took us away. Uh, and eventually, the bank took over our home. So when the war was over, we had nothing. We had absolutely nothing. And they said we couldn't take Blackie with us because they're not going to pay for the travel fare for a dog. We were heartbroken. And the government gave my parents $25 to all members of our family. There were five of us. We had a baby sister, so three children and my parents, father and mother. We got $25 each and a one-way ticket to anywhere in the United States that we wanted to go to. And my parents started a new life over again with only that $25.
When did you start writing books?
Well, even in camp, we had the government gave each block some paper. My father was a block manager, so he would bring some paper back, and so I scrawled a story, picture story, comic books essentially, uh, and and put them together with string binding, and gave it to my friends to read. So I was publishing my own book even as a kid in internment camps behind barbed wire fence.
A teacher shared, "My entire class was silent during your reading. You have definitely made an impression on them." And then asked, "What was life like when you were finally free? Was it hard to readjust?"
Well, it was very difficult, especially for my parents. The war was over, but the hatred toward Japanese Americans was still intense. And we weren't sure how safe it would be to go back to Los Angeles, where we came from. So my father decided to go, go back first to see how safe it is and get a place to stay and a job. And he said he'll write back to our mother still at that Tulu Lake camp. And he was gone for almost 10 weeks. And finally, he wrote to my mother telling us that he's got a place to stay for us and a job. The only job he could find or get was as a dishwasher in a Chinatown restaurant. Only other Asians would hire us. And when went back to Los Angeles, we discovered that our home was a flop house on Skid Row in downtown Los Angeles with scary people, smelly people, ugly people staggering around, leaning on the wall, or sleeping on the sidewalk. It was a very scary place to come back to, but our parents told us this is Los Angeles, our former home.
Drummond School in Chicago asked, "What inspired you to write books for children instead of adults?"
Well, as a matter of fact, I have written for adults. I have an autobiography that was published in 1994 when most of you kids weren't even born yet. And then I wrote a graphic memoir. Uh, Another way of describing it is a comic book. And I told my childhood imprisonment story as a comic book. And that became a bestseller. The title of that one is They Called Us Enemy because the government, the United States of America, called us Japanese Americans. We were Americans. We were innocent of any kind of subversive activity, and yet they categorized us as enemy alien. We were neither. We weren't the enemy, and we weren't aliens. We were born here in America. My mother was born here in America. My father was born in Japan, but he was brought to America when he was a young boy by his father, my grandfather. My father's mother had passed when he was very young, and so my paternal grandfather came to San Francisco with his two boys. Uh, my father being the younger of the two, and my father was educated from grammar school to uh, high school to college in San Francisco. So my father was very American despite his birth in Japan. And yet, after Pearl Harbor, we were all seen as the enemy and alien. And he was an alien, but he wasn't the enemy. And neither was my mother, who was born in Sacramento. And we kids were born in Los Angeles. Enemy alien is what they called us.
Lots of students, including Abby in fifth grade, are very curious what you ate in the camps.
We had a mess hall. The camp was, for example, in the Arkansas swamp, the population there was about 8,000 people. But we were moved from there to our second camp in Northern California. It was a high plain. There was no vegetation, only tumbleweeds rolling around. It was very cold and chilly. That wind blew fiercely, and it was a very uh, unpleasant place to live. A polar difference from the swamps of Arkansas. It was hot and sweaty and wet and swampy, and in the summertime, very hot, and in the wintertime, it snowed, and uh, we had a snowy Christmas the first year. But at the Tule Lake camp, it was very, very harsh.
What did you eat?
Oh, what did we eat? Uh, we ate in the mess hall at 3 meals a day: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we ate whatever the government had that was surplus. And it was the creativity of the mess hall cooks, all part of the internees that came up with ideas. Like when we adopted Blackie, what was on the menu for dinner that night was wieners sliced up and cooked in soy sauce, and it was called wieners teriyaki. Uh, that was rare. We didn't have meat often, and the meat we had was like wieners or Spam, uh, but it was mostly something stewy that they slopped out on our plate, um, like chili beans or a stew, that sort type of thing.
A fourth grader from Chicago says, my grandfather loves Star Trek. How long were you on Star Trek?
From the very beginning, our Star Trek was the first. You know, there have been many spin-offs after ours, but we were the first Star Trek. We were on TV for 3 seasons, and then the television series began, and then after the television series, not the television series, but 10 years later, we became a series of movies, and I did 6 of the original movies. But now, today, Star Trek is 58 years old, and since then there have been 10 spin-offs. The Next Generation, uh, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and so on and so on. So we consider them our children and our grandchildren, and so we have a big Star Trek family.
Okay, last question. Did you ever get another dog?
Oh, well, after we were released and we came to Los Angeles, there was a dog that looked pretty much like Blackie. And so we adopted him. Uh, and then after him, we got another dog that we named Skippy because he was uh, brown as a Skippy peanut butter. And then for a very brief time, we had a small bull terrier, but he was sadly run over by a car, and my parents wouldn't let us see him. And my father went to uh, gather his remains, and we buried him in the backyard. We were very sad. What a sad note to end on.
Well, I just wanted to tell everyone that to go over to the chat, and if there's anything you want to say to George, put it in the chat now, and I'll share that with him afterwards. Is there anything that you wanted to say to the young people watching today, George, before we end?
Well, I hope you enjoyed the reading and our brief conversation, and you learned something about American history. Uh, when I was a teenager, I was curious about all this, and I tried to learn as much as I could. And my father told me that our democracy is a great democracy. He loved quoting from President Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. Ours is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. He said those are noble ideals, but he also said that's also the weakness of our democracy because people make mistakes. And at times of terror, hysteria sweeps over the country, and they make decisions based on hysteria. And just simply because we looked like the people that bombed Pearl Harbor, they thought we were the enemy and imprisoned us. And so he said the lesson to be learned from this is in America, the people have to be actively engaged in our democracy and prevent hysterical people from making decisions. So the lesson to be learned from my lost freedom is as Americans, we need to stay informed and participate in a participatory democracy.
Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you to all the students who watched and put in excellent questions for George. You guys are so good at this. Uh, we will see you next month. Thank you so much, George. It was such a pleasure to be with you today.
It was my pleasure chatting with them, and I hope that the children continue to enjoy and do some research on their own and get more details on this chapter of American history.
Absolutely. Bye, everyone. Thank you.